Ukraine warns of multi-year food crisis. Zelensky says situation in Donbas very difficult. Ukraine Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba spoke to CNBC's Hadley Gamble at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Kuleba discussed the Ukraine war, the reconstruction of his country and further sanctions against Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the situation in the Donbas in eastern Ukraine is very difficult, with Russian forces concentrating their fire and manpower on assaulting the region and seizing key cities there. Zelensky said in his nightly address to the nation that practically the full might of the Russian army, whatever they have left, is being thrown at the offensive. Lyman, Popasna, Severodonetsk, Slaviansk. The occupiers want to destroy everything there. Russia fast-tracks citizenship for Ukraine residents. President Vladimir Putin issued an order to fast-track Russian citizenship for residents in parts of southern Ukraine largely held by his forces, while lawmakers in Moscow passed a bill to strengthen the stretched Russian. Putin's decree applying to the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions could allow Russia to strengthen its hold on territory that lies between eastern Ukraine, where Moscow-backed separatists occupy some areas, and the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia seized in 2014. The Russian army is engaged in an intense battle for Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland, known as the Donbas. In a sign that the Kremlin is trying to bolster its stretched military machine, Russian lawmakers agreed to scrap the age limit of 40 for individuals signing their first voluntary military contracts. A description of the bill on the parliament website indicated older recruits would be allowed to operate precision weapons or serve in engineering or medical roles. The chair of the Russian parliament's defense committee, Andrei Kartopolov, said the measure would make it easier to hire people with in-demand skills. US, EU and UK announced new initiative to support war crime investigations. The United States, European Union and United Kingdom announced the formation of the Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group, ACA, which aims to support the investigators documenting war crimes and other atrocities. The ACA is an essential element of the United States' commitment that those responsible for such crimes will be held to account, Secretary of State Antony Blinken wrote in a statement. In this regard, the ACA will liaise with the Department of Justice as it pursues accountability in U.S. courts. Blinken added. Russia has dismissed claims that its forces in Ukraine have committed war crimes and describes its ongoing war as a special military operation. Turkey makes demands on Sweden, Finland NATO membership. A senior Turkish official has insisted after talks with Swedish and Finnish officials that Turkey will not agree to the two Nordic countries joining NATO unless specific steps are taken to address, saying, "We have made it very clear that if Turkey's security concerns are not met with concrete steps in a certain time frame, the process will not progress," Ibrahim Kalin said after talks in Ankara that lasted about 5 hours. Kalin is the spokesman of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and a senior presidential aide. Turkey has said it opposes the country's membership of NATO, citing grievances with their perceived support of the Kurdistan Workers' Party and other entities that Turkey views as security threats. Kalin said Turkey's proposal for the two countries to lift arms export limits was met with a positive attitude by the Swedish and Finnish delegations. Mariupol official says first cargo ship to depart port in coming days. A Russian-backed official in the occupied Ukrainian port of Mariupol said the first ship to leave since pro-Russian forces completed their capture of the city would leave in the next few days, the TASS news agency. The official said the ship would take around 3,000 tons of metals to Rostov-on-Don in Russia, TASS said. Earlier, Russia's defense ministry said that Mariupol's port, a shallow water harbor on the Azov Sea, was operating normally. Putin hikes Russian pensions, plays down Ukraine impact on economy. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered 10% rises in pensions and the minimum wage to cushion Russians from inflation, but denied the country's economic problems were all linked to the war in Ukraine. With annual inflation near 18% last month, The Kremlin leader acknowledged that 2022 would be a difficult year for the Russian economy. When I say difficult, it doesn't mean all these difficulties are connected to the special military operation, Putin told a televised meeting of the State Council in Moscow. Because in countries that aren't conducting any operations, say, overseas, in North America, in Europe, inflation is comparable and, if you look at the structure of their economies, even more than that. His comments ignored the fact that rising inflation in Western economies is in part a direct consequence of Russia's war in Ukraine, which has driven up prices for energy and food around the world. The pension increase comes into effect from June 1, while the minimum wage hike kicks in on July 1. Zelensky offers condolences to families of victims in Texas school shooting. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky offered his condolences to the families of the victims in Tuesday's mass shooting at an American school that left at least 19 children and 2 teachers. I would like to express my condolences to all of the relatives and family members of the children who were killed in an awful shooting in Texas in a school, Zelensky said by video linked to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. As of this time, as far as I know, 21 people were killed, including 19 children, he said. Absolutely innocent children are being murdered in an absolutely peaceful time. This is terrible to have victims of shooters in peaceful times, he added. Russia says it will pay foreign debt in rubles after U.S. spend. Russia says it will pay dollar-denominated foreign debt in rubles, a move that is likely to be seen by foreign investors as a default. The U.S. Treasury Department led by Janet Yellen allowed a license to expire Wednesday that permitted Russia to keep paying its debt holders through American banks. The license applied to American investors and international investors who have dollar-denominated debt or bonds. The Russian finance ministry said it will pay in rubles and offer the opportunity for subsequent conversion into the original currency. The ministry didn't give a time frame for that to happen. Russia has not defaulted on its international debts since the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, when the Russian Empire collapsed and the Soviet Union was created. Russia defaulted on its domestic debts in the late 1990s during the Asian financial crisis but was able to recover from that default with the help of international aid. UN says at least 3,974 killed in Ukraine since start of war. The United Nations has confirmed 3,974 civilian deaths and 4,654 injuries in Ukraine since Russia invaded its ex-Soviet neighbor. 24. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said the death toll in Ukraine is likely higher, because the armed conflict can delay fatality. The international organization said most of the civilian casualties recorded were caused by the use of explosive weapons with a wide impact area, including shelling from heavy artillery and multiple launch rocket systems, as well as missiles and airstrikes. Multi-year food crisis a big threat, Ukraine's foreign minister warns. Global food prices are already soaring because of the war in Ukraine, with ships blocked from exporting the country's staple produce, like wheat. Dmytro Kuleba, Ukraine's foreign minister, has now warned that the blockade could lead to a multi-year food crisis. This is only the beginning, and if we allow Putin to continue this military madness, the crisis will go deeper and deeper, he told CNBC's Hadley Gamble at the World Economic Forum. If Russia does not lift its blockade, Ukrainian grain will be getting rotten. If this problem is not resolved, Ukrainian farmers will not plant another crop and the whole agricultural cycle in Ukraine will be interrupted, and that will mean a multi-year food. Kuleba said countries were already feeling the pressure of rising food prices. The European Commission and U.S. have accused Russia of weaponizing food supplies in the war, but Russia denies that, instead blaming Western sanctions. A Russian minister said Wednesday that Moscow would consider humanitarian corridors for ships exporting produce, in return for a relaxation of international sanctions. Ukraine won't cede any territory to Russia, Foreign Minister says. Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Minister has added to criticism of Henry Kissinger's suggestion that Ukraine should consider ceding territory to Russia in order to bring about. I respect Henry Kissinger, but I appreciate that he's not holding any official position in the U.S. administration. He has his own opinion, but we strongly disagree with it, Dmytro Kuleba, Ukraine's foreign minister, told CNBC Wednesday. This is not something we're going to do, he added. Kuleba said Ukraine had followed a policy of constructive dialogue with Russia even after it annexed Crimea in 2014, but this had not brought about a peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Donbas region, where there has been fighting between pro-Russian separatists and Ukrainian forces over. It never worked, and in the end it brought us all to the biggest war in Europe since World War II. If it failed once, it will fail twice, he said. Ukraine's polite reply to Henry Kissinger: "We will not give an inch of land to Putin." A Ukrainian MP has given what he called a polite reply to Henry Kissinger's suggestion that Ukraine should be prepared to cede some territory to Moscow in order to reach a peace deal. "I think Mr. Kissinger still lives in the 20th century and we are in the 21st century, and we are not going to give up any inch of our territory," Alexei Goncharenko, a Ukrainian member of parliament, told CNBC. "That would be the worst signal to Putin," he added. "We should stop Putin now and not let him go further," Goncharenko said, adding that he believed the best way to establish peace was to bring Ukraine inside the European Union as quickly as possible. Former U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger caused a stir earlier this week when he suggested that Ukraine should be prepared to cede some territory to Russia in order to reach a peace deal with Moscow. Speaking on a panel at the World Economic Forum on Monday, Kissinger said ideally, the dividing line should return to the status quo ante, meaning a return to the existing state of affairs before the war, suggesting that he thought that Russia should be allowed to retain Crimea, which it annexed in 2014. Kissinger, who served under Presidents Richard M. Nixon and Gerald Ford, said that pursuing the war beyond that point would not be about the freedom of Ukraine, but a new war against Russia itself. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has ruled out ceding any land to Russia as part of a deal, particularly in reference to the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, where Russian forces are currently focusing on. It's unclear whether Kyiv might accept that Crimea remains in Russian hands, however. Russia's invasion sending shock waves around the world, EU Commissioner says. "We clearly see the consequences of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. It's sending shock waves around the world, and the World Economic Growth forecast has been revised downwards considerably, and the same is true in the EU," Valdis Dombrovskis, European Vice President and Commissioner for Trade for the European Commission, told, speaking to CNBC at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which has been focused on the plight of Ukraine as Russia's invasion continues, as well as the global fallout from the war. Dombrovskis said the EU needed to act urgently to sever its energy. The invasion has led the EU to scramble to reduce its reliance on Russian gas supplies, although an EU-wide embargo on oil and gas from Russia is still not agreed upon. "We urgently need to move away from our dependence on Russian fossil fuels," Dombrovskis said.